They've come out with the news today that Citigroup is going to cut 11,000 jobs. That's, I think it's around 5% of their total workforce. The numbers on their on where I looked up, it said they had over 200,000 employees. So a good chunk, maybe not exactly 5%, somewhere around there, a little more, a little less. So they're cutting 11,000 employees, and this is fairly typical in the financial world. They've been having a lot of cutbacks recently, not just in employment, but in the services that they're offering, because it's become so simple for them to make money. They just, all they have to do is buy the bonds that the Fed is going to print, like Peter Schiff says, and then they turn them around at an easy profit. Why would you worry about serving the customer or keeping on employees to make real loans to create real wealth? And if you go and you look at the press statement, they say that the one thing they do say is the scale of their operations is leading to diminishing returns. And I think this is a good theme, or a good thing in the aspect of financial services. As the number of financial services workers increases, a lot of them become redundant. We don't need this many financial professionals in the country. The financial sector is very bloated. Now, I'm not saying it's a good thing these people lost their jobs. I have said in other videos that if you voted for Obama, I think you deserve to lose your job, but that's for another time. But the financial sector is bloated, and regardless of what I want or what anyone else wants, it's going to be cut, because you can't sustain an economy based on moving money around. That's not to say we don't need investment bankers and we don't need retail bankers to lend you money for your home or for anything else, but the sheer scale and the pervasiveness of finance in the economy right now is at an unsustainable level. And if you look at historical examples, you'll find that any country that abandons manufacturing in favor of a bloated financial services sector is totally doomed. Now, I'm not saying that manufacturing is the only thing we should have, but it's certainly important. So, look at Japan. After the war, and of course before the war, they started after the in the early 1900s, late 1800s is when they really started getting their industrial economy going. And then after the war, they built it up towards the war, and we bombed it, we being the U.S., to death. And then they made a huge comeback on the back of manufacturing. That was what the Japanese economy was based around. Now, I don't think that the way that they became a manufacturing nation was the best. So they subsidized industries heavily, and that led to a false boom. But in the 80s, that was the culmination of the false boom. They had a across-the-board financial bubble, real estate banks, and they were buying up real estate not only in Japan but across the world. Like they would buy commercial properties in New York. And due to the financialization of their economy, they had a huge collapse, and they've been in a mini depression for about 2 decades now. The same thing goes with Great Britain. They were the first major industrial power. That's where the Industrial Revolution could be said that it started, and they based their economy on raw materials and manufacturing. Raw materials not being their own, but securing raw materials by invading other countries and building up their domestic manufacturing base. But then, before the war, the Second World War, they focused on financial stuff. It was not manufacturing was not as important to them at that time. They went through a policy of profligate public spending, and then, of course, as we all know, they eventually went more or less bankrupt. It wasn't a catastrophic bankruptcy in the sense that we would usually think, but they lost control of their empire, and their manufacturing base was devastated, and is devastated up until this day. And then on the flip side, I've said that if you abandon manufacturing in favor of a bloated financial services sector, you can see that China, they had their industrial transformation, and they're still going through it. But even now, in this early stage, they've grown their economy based on manufacturing, but at this point they've come up to the point where they're getting a bloated financial sector just like Japan had, and their real estate prices are exploding. And the big thing that everybody is worried about now is whether that housing bubble will pop, and if the China bubble pops, will that drag the rest of the world down? So Citi's 11,000 layoffs are just another stake in the coffin of the bloated financial services sector. No matter how many times the government decides they're going to bail it out or subsidize it to try and to satisfy the whims of the bankers, that's going to come to an end. The financial sector is too big. And if you want more detailed info, I'm not a total expert, but Peter Schiff kind of harps on this theme sometimes, even though he's in the financial sector himself. He likes to focus on we need to produce real goods, real services. If you like Peter Schiff, go and look at some of his videos on it. He'll go in detail and give you a lot better. He'll do a lot better job of explaining why the financial sector is too bloated and how to fix it. Thanks for watching, and I'll post up the original link to the article if you haven't seen it already on the annotations and in the description.